Hello everyone and welcome to our latest general election opinion poll tracker video. So we started doing these a couple of months ago. Every month we have a look at how the opinion polls have been developing over the previous month, over the past month, and the projection from Electoral Calculus for the next UK general election. Going to have a look at more data as well, have a look at the ratings for the party leaders, Boris Johnson and also Sir Keir Starmer. We'll see how the government overall is doing in terms of its popularity or unpopularity. Yeah, it can be quite an interesting watch. So please like, share, subscribe if you're enjoying these videos, and I shall get on with the video for you very shortly. Just to say that the first one of these that we did a couple of months ago was suggesting a Conservative majority at the next general election of 60 seats. The last one that we did last month in July reduced that to a Conservative majority of 42 seats. You're going to see right now what the latest projection is at Electoral Calculus. So there it is. Current prediction, Conservative majority 20 seats. So over the past few months, this is being halved month by month. So we started off at 60. Conservative majority of 60 a couple of months ago. Last month that had been halved almost to 42, and it's been halved again to 20. I'm going to turn off the webcam and we shall go through the data and see how the parties are doing then. So, of course, I'll just explain this. These are the various columns for the parties. So we've got Conservative, Labour, Liberal Democrat, Reform, Green, SNP, Plaid, Others, DUP, Sinn Féin, SDLP and Alliance there in that column. This is the votes all of these parties achieved in 2019 and the seats that they achieved as well. So you see that in the 2019 general election, the Conservative Party achieved 44.7% of vote, 45% of vote, the biggest Conservative share of the vote since I think the 1970 general election. Now this would be a predictive part of the table just here. So based on the opinion polls conducted across the UK during July 2021, we can see that the Conservative Party is predicted to get a share of vote of 40.9%, which is well down, of course, on the 44.7% that they got in 2019. Labour forecast to get 34.6% of the vote. That's a bit up on the 33% that they had in 2019. Liberal Democrats forecast or projected, based on these opinion polls, to get 9.2% of the vote. That is a little bit down on the 11% that they achieved in 2019. We see very little change for Reform, which of course was Brexit Party back in 2019. Greens well up at 5.6%. That is a very high score for the Greens, well up compared to the 2.8% that they got in 2019. And then we see the SNP, not really all that much change. They got 4% in 2019, and they get 4.2% on the latest opinion polls. Now, what that does in terms of seats, it gives a central projection for seats for the Conservative Party of 335 seats. Labour projecting to get 230 seats. That's quite a bit up now on the 203 they got in 2019, but that 203 was like the lowest seat share that the Labour Party has had in a general election since 1935, and 230 is pretty poor, pretty low really historically. Liberal Democrats lose some seats. They go from 11 to 7. No seats for Reform, and despite the Greens being well up on the 2.8% that they got in 2019 at 5.6%, they only get one seat, and that, of course, is down to first past the post. And then we see the SNP on 55%, up on the 48% that they achieved in 2019. No real difference for Plaid. And then, of course, got the other parties down here. There is a margin of error with this projection, of course. So at the low end, the Conservatives could go down on the projection, within the margin of error. The Conservatives could go down as low as 248 seats. Alternatively, they could be as high as 400 311 seats within the margin for error. The Labour Party could go as low as 160 seats, which would be the worst result for them since 1918. Alternatively, though, they could actually just about scrape a majority and go to 313 seats. Remember, if you get to that kind of level, you've just got a bare majority. And then the Liberal Democrats, they could go as low as just 4 seats. They could go as high as 28 seats. Reform might get a couple of seats at the very highest end. Greens don't really change. And SNP could go as low as 35 seats, but could go as high as 56 seats, only 1 seat up on the central projection based on these opinion polls. But of course, this is like the central projection just here, this middle column. And so we see that the Conservatives on 335, which is well down on 365 that they achieved in 2019, and Labour on 230, which is quite a little bit up on the 203 that they achieved back in 2019. These are all of the opinion polls that were conducted during July, so there were several of them. This is from Wikipedia, of course. We start on the 1st of July down here, and the Conservatives have a lead of 6% with Savanta Conres, and we finish up on the 28th, 29th of July with YouGov, when Conservatives have a 5% opinion poll lead. Definitely there has been a reduction in the opinion poll lead for the Conservative Party. Around the middle part of July, we did get a few polls that gave the Conservatives quite a high lead. For example, there was YouGov on the 15th, 16th of July, giving them 13%. We also saw Cantor Public giving them 13% opinion poll lead as well. But generally, you see that on many of these polls, the Conservative lead has now gone down into single digits, especially in the second half of the month. So we see, for example, that we have Survation here with the Conservative opinion poll lead of just 2% there, and the Conservatives are under 40% in that poll, up 39% with Labour on 37%. So clearly there is a significant narrowing of the Conservative opinion poll lead that is taking place through this summer, which is why we see the projection for their majority reduced from where we started off a couple of months ago at 60 seats, now down to 20 seats. Most of the polls are still keeping the Conservatives at or above 40%, but you see another one, right, that YouGov, right at the very end, again has the Conservatives going down to 39%, but Labour is lower on that poll at 34%. So it looks like Labour has lifted up right low 30s to probably mid 30s on a lot of these polls. Conservatives are hovering around the 40% mark, and the overall Conservative lead is probably somewhere around 5%, I would have thought, on a lot of these polls. You can see on this, again from Wikipedia, this graph, how the Conservative lead is narrowing over Labour. So we've got our percentages on the side, and we've got our dates in monthly periods along the bottom. Look how large a Conservative lead was at the beginning of the pandemic in the spring of 2020. Absolutely massive Conservative lead. They're over 50% in some of those opinion polls during the spring of 2020. Through the summer and autumn of 2020, there was quite a dramatic narrowing of the Conservative lead, and in fact we did reach parity, almost crossed over between Conservative and Labour during the winter of 2020-2021, and then into the spring of 2021 we see the Conservative and Labour lead widening again as the vaccine rollout takes place, and we start to see the pandemic beginning to get a little bit better. We find that the Conservative lead gets wider. We're coming into the summer. I think the vaccine boost is beginning to wear off, and so the Conservative lead is starting to reduce. Labour beginning to lift up. Down here we've got Liberal Democrats, Greens and SNP, and they don't look to be moving great. There was a little bit of a bounce for the Liberal Democrats when they won the by-election at Chesham and Amersham a couple of months ago, or a few weeks ago. It was a little bit of a bounce. It looks like that is already beginning to reduce, and you see that the Liberal Democrat trend line is beginning to drop a little bit, but definitely a narrowing of the lead for the Conservatives over Labour, and we actually have some opinion polls there, but where the lead is now very, very close, only 1 or 2% within it. In terms of approval, so this is how things look in terms of approval for Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson is becoming more unpopular. Boris Johnson has become more unpopular through July. So these are all the opinion polls that have been conducted during July 2021, asking whether people approve or disapprove or have a favourable or unfavourable sort of perception of Boris Johnson. However, you know, it's worded, it's either well satisfied, approve, disapprove, favourable, unfavourable. You see, there was a poll right at the beginning of July, on the 5th of July, from Repeal Wilton, that gave Boris Johnson a narrow approval rating of +2%. But since then, Boris Johnson's approval rating has been going more negative. So you can see that, in particular in the later polls, into minus minus double digits there with those later polls. So, for example, the final poll that was conducted was from Ipsos MORI, asking favourable, unfavourable. Final poll of July was from MORI, and that gives Boris Johnson a very negative rating of -20, 27% finding him favourable, 47% finding him unfavourable. Boris Johnson is definitely becoming more unpopular as the Conservative poll rating is reducing. He personally is becoming more unpopular as this summer is wearing on. But it's not really benefiting Keir Starmer all that much, I have to say. So these are the, again, favourable, unfavourable, or approval, disapproval ratings for the leader of the opposition. And they're all in minus double digits as well. But one change, I suppose, is not quite so negative later on. So you see that early on in July we have sort of -23, -38, -10, exceptionally negative for a leader of the opposition. Remember, the leader of the opposition has not upset anybody, he's not doing anything because he's not in power. So generally, leaders of the opposition will be more popular than Prime Ministers. It's quite unusual to see such negative ratings for a leader of the opposition. And we have very negative ratings for Keir Starmer early in July. Later on in July, not quite as negative. For example, we have Survation only at -2 for Keir Starmer in terms of being unfavourable. So 33% finding Keir Starmer favourable in that poll, and 35% finding him unfavourable. That's probably a little bit of an outlier, though. Most of the polls there do still have him in minus double digits. So, for example, the final poll conducted, which of course has Boris Johnson at -20, has Keir Starmer at -15. Perhaps Keir Starmer not quite as unpopular at the moment with these polls as Boris Johnson, but neither of them are doing particularly well, I have to say. It does look as though both of them are quite unpopular. One crumb of comfort for Boris Johnson and the Conservatives is this. So this is, rating both Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer together in terms of who people rate overall. And with this, we see that Boris Johnson still has a positive rating over Keir Starmer. So for this column just here, we've got YouGov just there at the very top. So Boris Johnson rated at 33% against 28% for Keir Starmer in that opinion poll. That gives Boris Johnson a 5% lead over Keir Starmer. And going further back into July, so we have, for example, Opinium giving Boris Johnson a 4% lead. And a little bit earlier on in the month, we have Savanta Conres giving Boris Johnson a 15% lead over Keir Starmer. So out of the two, possibly Boris Johnson is still a little bit more favoured, but they are both pretty unpopular, and definitely Boris Johnson's popularity has become, has become a lot more unpopular as July has gone along, and as the summit is going along, he and his government and the Conservative Party are becoming more unpopular. This is how government approval is looking now. So you see that the majority of people disapprove of what the government is doing. As I say, very often governments are unpopular. We are quite hard on our governments and on our prime ministers and our politicians. So the default setup generally outside of elections is for governments and prime ministers and just generally politicians really, but particularly governments and prime ministers to be unpopular outside of election time. But we do see that after the government almost became more people almost approved of what the government was doing as disapproved back in the spring. You see that the situation has sort of reverted to a more typical setup. I don't think this is particularly alarming for the government. I don't think the government approval to disapproval is particularly abnormal for like midterm in a parliament, but we do see that the government is more unpopular than popular. So 47% disapprove of what the government is doing, as opposed to 31% that approve of the government at the moment. And I say that's probably quite a, quite a sort of typical situation, really, for a government in midterm in this part of the political side. So I don't think that's particularly unusual. I think what is happening with the Conservative poll rating, though, which is reducing, it's halving month by month, has halved month by month over the past 3 months, and particularly in terms of Boris Johnson personally, with his ratings really nosediving very, very quickly over the past month or so. I think that's perhaps a little bit more of a warning flag for the government and for the Prime Minister. But the overall government approval, I don't think, is particularly out of the ordinary. And what we could be seeing here is like a reversion, back to politics as normal. We have been through a very, very unusual period, of course, with the pandemic, and it's interesting the way government popularity and to some degree Boris Johnson's own popularity has sort of tracked the pandemic a lot, and now as we seemingly coming towards the end of the worst part of the pandemic, anyway, let's hope so, it looks like things are perhaps reverting to a more typical situation where the opposition perhaps becomes a little bit more popular, the government becomes a little bit more unpopular, leader of the opposition perhaps gets a bit more popular, Prime Minister gets a little bit more unpopular, and we might just be seeing a reversion back to a more typical setup. I would suspect we're going to see Labour taking the lead in a few of the polls when we look at them next month in September. I would suspect that at some point through August we will probably see at least 1 or 2 polls where we either have like a tie with Conservative and Labour, or possibly even Labour going like 1-2% ahead. So that's going to be quite noteworthy if that happens, because Labour has not had an opinion poll lead for a very long time. So yeah, that's something to watch out for perhaps in September. So the overall projection from this month from Electoral Calculus is a Conservative majority of 20 seats. That is being reduced. It's been halved. It has been halved over the past 3 months, and we wait to see, whether that is down to next month. That might be down to like Conservative largest party within a hung parliament. So we'll see when we come to do September's analysis. If you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more, I'm planning to do these every month until the general election, which we're expecting to be sometime around 2023, 2024. And then we get to the election itself. If there's enough interest, I might do them, every day and track opinion through the election. But that will be for much further into the future if people want to see that. But if you enjoyed this video and you are enjoying these videos, let me know in the comments, please, if you'd like to see more. And let me know what you think about what's going on at the moment in terms of the opinion polls. Do you think Labour's going to get a lead in the polls very shortly? I reckon we might see 1 or 2 polls with Labour in the lead in the next month or so. So that will be interesting to see. But let me know in the comments whether you think that is likely. And yeah, that's it for August analysis in terms of the political setup, and all getting quite interesting as we're beginning to move in towards the autumn and winter. Right, so we'll have another one of these for you next month. For this one, though, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.